Look, in the grand scheme of things, wins and losses don't matter this season, but it would be really nice to watch a White Sox game and not think, how's this team going to blow it? And let's discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the White Sox had a lead on the Milwaukee Brewers through 5 innings, but the entire time I was thinking, how are they going to blow it? And it happened in the 6th, and I want to discuss how it would be nice if that feeling would not pop up every time this team has a lead. Then Colson Montgomery is getting pulled from game action to work on a swing in Arizona. Let's discuss this latest plan to get this top 5 prospect going. And finally, since I discussed some retro stuff on yesterday's crossover episode, no Way Back Wednesday. Instead, I do want to discuss the updated City Connect uniforms. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So when Luis Robert Jr. and Andrew Benintendi hit back-to-back homers in the first, usually you're thinking, hey, here we go. Got a shot at winning. But this is the White Sox, where blowing leads and losing come hand in hand. It's almost like instead of good guys wear black, it's now White Sox baseball. We'll blow a lead for you. And that's what happened on Tuesday night on the South Side as the White Sox lost 7-2 to the Brewers. And it just gets to the point where it would just be nice to watch a White Sox game and not get this type of result as I like how WBBM's Rob Hart tweeted this out. This is at Rob Hart, WBBM, for those watching on YouTube. I got the tweet. 2 flavors of White Sox losses. Bullpen slowly bleeds out tonight. Just not good enough and lose by 1 Sunday. And that's basically what you are been getting lately when the White Sox have a lead. Either the bullpen is eventually going to slowly bleed out, or they just don't have enough offensive firepower to keep piling on runs. And a part of that is the team is just talent deficient, and they're very flawed. And also, that's one of the reasons why wins and losses are not part of this 2025 exercise. Yeah, it would be great to have some wins, but the whole point of this season is just to get an idea of guys who are, young players close to the big league level, at the minor league level, getting a runway to see, can they be viable pieces on the next competitive team that we're hoping comes by 2027? Excuse me one. But at the same point, last night's loss was another thing when I was watching. It would be like, man, it would be nice to see some of these guys getting an opportunity, taking advantage of it, because that's the other part of this exercise. Finding guys off the scrap heap, seeing if there's still something major league viable there. And, for example, Brandon Eisert. Now, he's not the main reason the White Sox lost, but he couldn't keep the game tied at 2-2 in the 6th when the Brewers poured on 4 runs. Now, 3 of them were charged to Bryce Wilson. Bryce Wilson did allow the base running problem that Isert inherited. But I'm not going to totally go off on Bryce Wilson because, it was a bullpen game, and he was the guy slated to get the majority of the innings. And basically, in essence, he's the starter. The White Sox are just going with this opener experiment for now. But Wilson is going to give up base runners. He's going to give up runs. He's not perfect. He wasn't charged with coming in a high-leverage situation to get outs like Isert was. And Isert, who's been casted off by other teams, and the White Sox still think there's something there. And again, I have nothing wrong with finding relievers off the scrap heap because, again, one of the reasons why we're still in this mess is because of poorly allocated resources to the bullpen during the last contention window. Remember all that money, that limited money spent on Diekman and Kendall Graveman and Joe Kelly that left absolutely no money for second base and shortstop. So I have no problem with seeing, does Isert have something? But then I would like to see Isert take advantage of what he has in front of him, an opportunity to prove he's a big league pitcher, even if it's a reliever. And what does he do? He plucks Sal Frelick with bases loaded, and then he gives up a 2 RBI single to Caleb Durbin. I mean, you also have Jared Shuster, who's already been given one opportunity in 2024, getting another shot, and he gives up 2 runs in the 8th. I mean, you've got these youngish bullpen arms with the opportunity to prove that they belong in the big leagues. And they just keep proving they're not good enough. And they don't belong in the big leagues. And I think that is another frustrating part right now, as GM Chris Getz has got to know when to cut the cord. For example, on a guy like Isert, who's given up 8 earned runs in 12 innings of work in April. That's enough for me to say, you know what? Next guy. You know, I'm tired of seeing Coffee with Addison Coffee on the Charlotte Knights social media. Let's see what Addison Coffee can do. Maybe he can get clutch outs. And I also get that these guys are not really likely big league players to begin with, but they have at least enough talent, something in their pitch arsenal to be worth a look, and they're just not taking advantage of their opportunity. I mean, you can't even get a Corey Julks-like bounce from Joshua Pistachios. And I mean, I know Julks turned into a pumpkin last year, but at least for a month or two, he looked like he knew he had an opportunity to prove himself, to prove that he was a big leaguer, and he did. Briefly before regressing to the mean. But it's tiring to see, like, you can't get a guy that's hot. And even when you do, you know, the only ones that they have that are like hot right now outside of Shane Smith, who pitches every 5 days, and Miguel Vargas. He obviously seems more comfortable at the plate with his swing adjustment, but he also seems more comfortable lower in the order. So it's not like you're going to get him hitting 4 or 5 times a game. And on a night when Benintendi and Robert Jr. both jump out on a very good pitcher in Freddie Peralta, the rest of the lineup proceeded to produce just 2 more hits and 1 more walk. Because Luis Robert Jr. also had a walk, and so did Benintendi. And that is why, when I was watching that early 2-1 lead, I was like, yeah, they ain't gonna maintain this. They're not gonna hold this over the Milwaukee Brewers. You know, yeah, the Milwaukee Brewers right now are 15-15, but they still have enough talent to potentially contend for a wild card spot. That's not going to hold up with Bryce Wilson having to cover at least 4 innings. No offense to Bryce Wilson. I just think he's much better in high leverage situations, not in long relief. And I keep thinking, again, every time the White Sox have a lead, how are they going to blow it? Because the offense rarely piles on the runs, and the bullpen has just a bunch of guys who are just not taking advantage of the opportunity to produce big outs, or at least consistently. I mean, you got Mike Vassell taking advantage of his opportunity. You got Steven Wilson taking advantage of his opportunity. He's getting another opportunity. Now he's taking advantage. Cam Boozer, he's taking advantage of his opportunity. I have to take Tyler Gilbert out of the equation because right now he just doesn't feel like a reliever, as he's been used as an opener 3 times in the past 4 games. But the rest of the bullpen, Isert, Jordan Leisure, Penn Murphy, and Shuster, and even Fraser Ellard, who is still on the 15-day IL, who might be coming off soon. Heck, even Mike Clevenger, all given an opportunity to prove that they can get big timeouts, haven't taken advantage. I mean, you know, on one end, this speaks to maybe the eye for talent that Chris Getz does not have, and his lieutenants, maybe they just don't have the eye for bullpen talent. I don't know. But the bullpen continues to be this huge, huge problem. And that's why another conclusion, after and during this April, which, by the way, if the White Sox do somehow win tonight, they will have matched the 2023 start. And remember, that team was just run-of-the-mill bad, and that's another just part of the expectation of the season, or of this exercise. Can you just get back to being run-of-the-mill bad and not being historically awful? But after and during this April, my hope is the bullpen gets shaken up and some other options are tried to get some desperately needed high leverage outs. But my fear is Chris Getz is going to be patient with some of these guys like he was in 2024. And I mean, my hope is stop being patient with a lot of these guys that are struggling. But what is he going to do? He's going to be patient with Andrew Vaughn. He's going to give him love. He's going to point out, like he did in yesterday's pregame press conference, oh, that Andrew Vaughn's just unlucky. He's just not getting the breaks. When he should be given the Spencer Torkelson treatment. He should be, I agree with a lot of the people. He should be optioned to AAA. Just for the message that, hey, you're no longer valued in this franchise. You have to make yourself valuable now. Nah. He's just unlucky. Got to show him some love. Especially when Tim Elko is raking. But what's the response? Well, he's going to be here at some point. No. Start holding these guys accountable then. Because that's the whole point of this exercise. Of this season. Finding parts and players that can be part of the next competitive team. Even if it is in a Leury Garcia role like Brooks Baldwin, at least you know you have a super utility role player now. Okay? Miguel Vargas might be the third baseman now with the swing adjustment. But Brandon Eisert is not going to be the high leverage left-handed reliever that you think he is. He's already shown in 1 month. We don't need to waste more time. Let's get on to the next guy. And if that guy doesn't get it out, on to the next guy. That's what this whole point of this exercise should be. But it's not, and that means the viewing existence of how we watch White Sox games will always be, how are they going to blow this one? And what type of flavor will it be? Sudden defeat or slowly bleeding out? Well, Chris Getz did announce that the team is pulling their number 4 ranked prospect, Colson Montgomery, from game action, and they're sending the shortstop to Arizona for a week or two to work with hitting director Ryan Fuller. Let's discuss this decision next on Locked On White Sox. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so I guess maybe I am the guy in the meme at the town hall standing up, expressing something that is, very controversial because I believe in it, but I'm all for doing whatever it takes to get Colson Montgomery going. However, I do look at the context. As I keep telling everybody, context matters. And I understand the optics look terrible. As the man once considered the team's top hitting prospect continues to struggle at AAA in a ballpark that's a bandbox, to the point that the team has now pulled him from minor league games. And it's also not a great look to pull him so he can make swing adjustments, especially when Miguel Vargas has made an adjustment while games are still going on at the big league level. I mean, Miguel Vargas, now granted, it might have been a small adjustment of where he's, starting his bat, but it's still basically rewiring how he's swinging the bat at the big league level. I mean, here he is. He's facing Aroldis Chapman in Boston while trying to make these changes. He's facing Garrett Crochet. So I get the optics of, oh boy, now we got to be concerned. But at the same time, at least Getz is listening to the adults in the room. As he cited, this is what the Diamondbacks did with Geraldo Perdomo. when assistant GM Josh Barfield was in charge of the D-backs development. D-backs. I said D-backs. You always got to be careful there. And Perdomo has a slash line of 260, 377, 423 this season. So if pulling Montgomery, who has more power than Perdomo too, is what it's going to take to get those numbers at the big league level, I'm fine with it. Okay? I'm okay with that. And here is the logic that gets explained. This is from Scott Merkin, MLB.com White Sox beat reporter, who tweeted out the quotes. For those watching on YouTube, I do have the quotes up. So let's just start with his first tweet. This is, I'm going to read it up, going bottom up for those watching on YouTube. Getz on Colson, quote, "We're going to get some one-on-one work with him outside of the Charlotte day to day, and work on a swing. We anticipate that to be a fairly short period of time, but felt like it was appropriate. He's on board." End quote. Then more Getz on Colson, quote, "We're optimistic we're going to be able to make strides. Players oftentimes, they wait until the offseason to make some of these adjustments. We figured, why wait? Let's attack this, and we look forward to seeing what we can do." End quote. More from Getz. Getz, quote, "I think it's part of the development process. He's 23 years old. In a way, he's still at the beginning of his career. We don't want to wait any longer. We felt like, let's go and attack this now." End quote. Wow, that's a spin job. I mean, yeah, Montgomery is still 23, so it's not like we have to be like, oh, this is a bust. His career is done. I mean, this isn't like 25-year-old Colson Montgomery. He's still on the timeline of still being a relatively young prospect. But at the same time, are you talking about in semantics the beginning of his MLB career? Then yes. But the beginning of his professional career, he's been with the organization now for 3 years? This isn't like, oh, he's well at the beginning. No. And you were in charge for part of his development, Chris Getz. You were actually the guy that was in charge of player development. Obviously, though, something has to be done. His Colson slash line is 149, 223, 255 with 43 strikeouts in 23 games for the night. So obviously you have to do something. And this is on top of the 214 average last season he had at AAA. So clearly that hot September he had and that great Arizona Fall League he had last season, that's just a mirage. But think about this. And this is where I do think, though, you have some criticism towards Getz, especially semantically when he said, oh, he's at the beginning of his career and, oh, we want to attack this. And also, like making swing adjustments like in winter. Like he's talking like this is winter of, and Jim Margulis on SoxMachine.com has a great piece on it. And I like how he wrote about that, he's talking like this is winter of 2026, next winter. No. This is stuff that probably should have been done last winter, which we all thought was supposed to be done. You were talking about, oh, he's made his swing adjustments. He's made all these adjustments. He's ready to go. That's how highly Getz thought about Montgomery. Even after the bad overall season, he thought so highly of him, he didn't bring any cover at shortstop. None. Like if you think about it, he at least brought in professional catcher Matt Thaiss, probably anticipating Edgar Caro and Kyle Teal were going to need some time in the minors to work on other things like, DHing, being a first baseman, maybe playing the outfield. He brought in Josh Rojas, who even though has an injury, he's supposed to be back, I think, next week. And that's going to be a whole nother can of worms. But he brings him in to play second base just in case Chase Meidroth needed some time in the minors, which turns out he didn't have the greatest spring training, needed maybe a week or two to really learn, hey, I got to attack some pitches, provide some professional cover. He provided a ton of professional cover in the outfield with Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater and Michael A. Taylor. Because pretty much all these foundational prospects that you have in the outfield, George Wolcott and Brandon Montgomery, they're years away. Now, obviously, injuries have impacted that, but still, he at least brought in some professional cover. Shortstop, nope. In fact, he even got rid of Jacob Abaya and then brought him back. Nick Maton, he thought, and even then they didn't play him. And I get also why this doesn't look great, because you do have Amaya barely hitting worth a lick. Although, man, that guy does rob hits. I mean, I know a lot of people, I know A lot of you do not like Jacob Amaya at the plate. I'm one of them. I mean, you might as well just get up and go to the bathroom. Unless it's a sacrifice situation. There's three things he does well, though, and you got to give him credit for this. He fields tremendously well. You have to give him that. He had another great play in the field yesterday. He will sacrifice bunt very well, which he did yesterday. And he can hit a sacrifice fly. That's about it. That's all he can do. But you need a lot more from that if that's going to be your regular shortstop. I mean, the White Sox have been so desperate for production at shortstop that they even had Bobby Dalbec getting a start. And the Boston Red Sox dumped the idea of Dalbec ever being a shortstop years ago. Now, Gage Workman, he could be tried out there, and he did get a pinch hit. And I think that he should be tried out there. Obviously, everybody keeps pining for Brooks Baldwin to get a shot there, but since the outfield is ravaged by injuries, they need him out in the outfield. And Chase Meidroth isn't coming off the IL until later this week. So that's another reason, though. It's still not great to see Montgomery pulled because ideally, with all these problems, you could have just had Colson Montgomery up had he been producing. Now, if Ryan Fuller, though, is supposed to be charged with fixing hitting throughout the entire organization, and he wants to work with Montgomery for a couple of weeks at the spring training facility, I'm fine with that. That's the reason why I'm the man standing up. I'm with you, Shy Sox fan Mike. Because if this is what Fuller thinks he needs to help Colson Montgomery, and this is his job to be the director of hitting, to impart the hitting development that the Orioles had, this is what he wants to do, I'm fine with it. If they want to hit Control-Alt-Delete on Colson's swing and use the new equipment installed at Glendale to reboot him, fine. But this has got to be it. You got to get this man right or you have to move on. And I think I'm more disappointed in the team was willing to rush him to the big leagues before realizing, maybe he needs help. And I think that's the thing that really it speaks to the bigger picture. Because I've had guests on this show talking about how they even rushed him to AAA. They've been inconsistent. Now, part of it is he had an injury. His back injury. One of the reasons why a lot of people think he's probably not going to be able to play shortstop. He's 23 years old and he already has back problems. Might want to move him to first base. But at the same time, they have just solely not helped this young man completely. And think about it. The belief was he was just going to Charlotte for a month or two to produce, and he'd be the starting shortstop. Because remember, it was that back injury that kept him out for 10 days. And weak hitting in between that and spring is why they sent him back to AAA to begin with. But they were like, oh, yeah, we want him to work on a few things. We think he's going to work on it. He's going to do great. And he's going to be up in 2 months. Didn't happen. I think maybe the pressure got to him. I don't know. Maybe he's still injured with that back. But either way, you are saying now we have to completely press Control-Alt-Delete. Especially when he was probably rushed to AAA in the first place. But obviously, this is now water under the bridge. At least the organization is willing to admit, hey, he needs help. He's one of the vital talents to the next competitive team. Even if he might not play shortstop on it, we've got to help him. We've got to figure out how to make him right. We've got to invest some resources. And if this is what Ryan Fuller thinks is needed, then I support it. Well, the updated City Connect uniforms dropped on Monday. And since I talked retro stuff with Chuck Freeman of Locked On Brewers yesterday on that crossover, I didn't have the chance to discuss the City Connect 2.0 debut. So I'll touch on that instead of a Way Back Wednesday. And that's next on Locked On White Sox. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. My go-to flavors are the roasted and salted or the honey roasted. The roasted and salted are great because it has that perfect blend of that roasted flavor, but just enough salt where I don't need a gallon of water to wash them down. And the honey roasted flavor, talk about great flavor. Just an explosion of honey goodness. And I'm a big fan of honey flavored stuff. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options, they're a classic favorite. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. All right, so I love the cap on the team's City Connect 2.0. Not a fan of everything else. The team officially unveiled the 2.0 version on Monday. That is an ode to the ties to the Chicago Bulls, another franchise owned by Jerry Reinsdorf that's in mediocrity. And for those watching on YouTube, I've got the tweet of the White Sox announcing the City Connects, so you can see it. You got the red Chicago, the Bulls red away, black sleeves, black pants, got some piping there. The one thing I do love, though, is the winged cap, and they actually are going to have two versions. The players get to pick. There's either a black or there's going to be a red. I've got the tweet then from MLB for those watching on YouTube so you can see it. And I am glad they revived that logo from the Go-Go Sox era. I mean, I've always thought that that's a neat, underrated logo, but everything else feels like, they knew it would be hard to top 1.0, so let's just try something. I mean, I'm going to give them some grace on that because I'm a huge fan of the Southside logo. I'm a huge fan of the Shy Hat. I thought they got it right on the first try. And the Sox announced they're still going to rock version 1.0. 2.0, I believe, is going to be rocked every Friday night home game. And then, obviously, on Select, they'll still rock the South Side. But that's a true City Connect, as it's an ode to the side of town that the Sox have played on for 125 years. It identifies, South Side versus North Side. Like, I think they got it correct the first try. But hey, we got to push merch here. So this feels like, you can only do so much with the Chicago flag. So let's go with the ties to the other team that Jerry owns. Maybe. I mean, I know, what was it? PGH Concepts on Twitter. They tweeted that it would have been cool to go with the pinwheel. The ode to the exploding scoreboard. I think that would have been neater. But, hey, Jerry's let's give an ode to another organization Jerry owns that's living out the past. Because this season is all about the 125th year of existence for the White Sox and the 20th anniversary of winning the 2005 World Series. And we know the Bulls have been living off those 1990s championships and Michael Jordan for the last 30 years. So makes sense to me. Again, it just felt like it was a little unimaginative. That's the way I look at it. That's just my opinion for me speaking. I would have preferred if it was like a true all red look. I think that would have been neat with the black sleeves, maybe. Why not? Even though they probably would have looked like a bright crayon out there. But at least it would have been bold. And I think that's why I want to come from that context, because I'm not here to insult Nike. I'm not here to insult, Fanatics. Please, I'm not insulting you, Fanatics. I don't want any more emails. Got one when I was on the site expert of Blackhawk Up. Trust me, I don't want to get on any of that. But the White Sox have always been bold when it comes to their uniforms and their logos. I mean, the Sox have the best logo in all of sports. They just do. That's a hill I'm going to die on. I mean, it's hip-hop culture. It's iconic. And they've always had the best jerseys. Whether it's the 1950s look, the 1970s, the red pinstripes look, that's, and the baby blues. Those were a neat look. Even the softball uniforms that they rocked in the late 70s with the Southside Hitman. At least it was being bold. And the beach towel look in the 1980s, that's a classic look. And I always maintain the late 80s, that early 90s and the early 90s, that, cursive C. I always thought that's an underrated look too. So when you got these great iconic looks, I mean, the one thing that you can always set your watch to is the White Sox are going to have they're going to look great no matter what, because they have the best uniforms. And this is like, it just kind of meets the mark. Still love the cap, and yes, I did order one. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss if Shane Smith stuck it to his former team or not. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding how it always feels like watching a Sox game comes with how they're going to blow it, Colson Montgomery's latest development plan, and reaction to the updated City Connect uniforms. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.